In this video, I would like to look at how we can use loops to iterate through strings. And so this program is structured a little bit differently than the rest. This time I'm going to use a function each time that takes a string as an argument and returns a value. That way we get to test it multiple times to see if it works. And we'll work through these examples, and then there's a couple of problems for you to try at the end. So, all right, let's start with a simple one. Return the count of the number of times the letter Z occurs in a string. So we've counted with lists before, but this is very similar. So we declare an accumulator variable. If I'm counting something, I pretty much always just use the value count. And I'm going to make my loop to go through the string. And strings are iterable, just like lists are. And the element in a string is just an individual character. So if I make up a variable that says, if this is a string, what's in it? A character. So I'll say for every character in S, then I can just check to see if the character happens to be a Z. Then we'll take our count and add 1 to it. And then when we're all done, we'll return the count. And see how the return statement is tab even with the beginning of the for loop. So this statement won't get executed until after the for loop is finished going through all characters in the string, right? So, right when character is the P, nothing happens. When it's I, this condition doesn't happen. When the character is a Z, the count goes up 1. When it's a Z, the count goes up 1, right? And so on. All right, so let's run this and make sure it works for all these functions. We should get 3, 2, and then 0. Let me move the output over here. And we do. Now we got none for the rest because I haven't completed this function yet. Right? So that's how you count characters in a string. Next one, it says return a string which is a copy of S, except for that all instances of Q have been removed. This is similar to a summation algorithm that we studied earlier, only instead of adding things to make a number, we're going to add things to make a string. So I'm going to start out with a result string and make it empty. And then I'm going to say for every character in S, let's see, if the character, and this time we want to see if it's not a Q. If it's not equal to a Q, then we'll take our result and we'll plus equals the character. And we go ahead and return it. So when we loop through quality, right, the first character we grab is the Q, and that is equal to a Q, so we skip this block. The next character is a U, which is not a Q, so the result goes from being an empty string to containing a U. In the next iteration of the loop, we have an A, which is not a Q, so the A gets added onto the end. So this result string is getting built one character at a time. And when we have a string like this, right, all of the non-Q characters get added onto result. All right, so let's take a look now. We're going to get slightly more complicated, and the next 3 problems, something different happens. So this is where you have to really pay attention. It says, so this problem says return the count of the number of times the string has consecutive letters that are the same. And so what we have to do in this problem now is be able to look at 2 characters in the string at the same time. And this kind of loop only looks at 1 character at a time. So we have to change things up. We're going to use it. We have to use a different kind of for loop in this case for problems where you want to look at more than 1 character at a time. And so I'm going to loop. I'm going to make a loop that goes through the string, referring to each character by its index rather than just character by character. So let's do the loop first, and then we'll worry about the count. Okay, so I'm going to say for I in range. And we're going to stop at the length of the string. And then when I want to look at 2 characters in the string, right? I'm going to say if, I'm going to say si is equal to si plus 1. Okay. And this is where we need to declare an accumulator now. So I'll do count is equal to 0. And this will be count plus equals 1. So let's think about what happens here. Right, this LENS. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. For this first example, there are 9 characters in the string. And when I make a range like this, right, it's an up to but not including this number, which is going to be 9. So this is a loop that will count from 0 to 8. And this is character 0, this is character 1, and this is character 2, and so on, and this is character 8. So when I is 0, right, this would be the A, and then this part would be the B, which is the next, right, the next character. When I is 1, whoops, we're going to look at this B, and then the character I plus 1 would be this B, which is in position 2. And that's how we can look at 2 characters at the same time. So I'm going to return the result. And let's watch, and we're going to get an error. And what we got here was string index out of range. And let's think about why. So I'm trying to look at 2 characters at once. And I know that, like with this first example, the last character in it was in position 8. And so when I try to look at position 8, the character at position 8, this tries to look at the character at position 9, which does not exist. And that's where we had a string index out of range problem. So what we need to do with our loop is stop it. Well, if we're going to peek ahead 1, we have to stop our loop 1 short of the end. So what I want my loop to do is go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that way when I look at character 7 here, and this looks at character 8, I'm okay. Same in this loop. When I look at character 6, and then I peek ahead to look at character 7, I'm okay. So we're going to stop. So this is a common trick we have to have in our, in our skill set, is understanding that when you want to look at 2 adjacent elements, one of the things you can do is stop your loop 1 short so that you don't go out of range. All right, and so let's run this and see if we get the right numbers. Oh, result is not defined. Oops, wrong thing. Return count. There we go. And so this has, let's see, 1 pair of consecutive elements, 2, and then these 2 E's, so that would be 3. This doesn't have any, and here's 1, and 2, and 3. Okay, so that's good. And whenever I'm testing loops where I'm changing the beginning or ending bounds of the loops, I always like to make sure that something I'm counting occurs at both the beginning and the end of the loop to make sure I'm catching that. Because sometimes if I adjust, sometimes I might make an adjustment and then not realize that I'm not counting things at the end of the loop or maybe the beginning of the loop properly. All right. Oh, one more thing. Why did I use the letter I here? I could use whatever I want. It doesn't make any difference at all. I used I because I'm using it to refer to the index of a character in S. So that's why. Index begins with I, so that's why I chose it. But there's nothing special about using the letter I there at all. All right, so let's do 2 more. Count the number of times the sequence ABC occurs in a string. Now we're going to get 3 characters at a time. So I'm going to make a count. And I'm going to say 4. And I'm looking at more than 1 character, so I can't do for character in S. I have to do a for I in range length of S. And now let's think about this. It's like, wait a minute, I'm getting 3 characters at a time. So this is minus one, the length minus 1, that's the length minus 2, that's the length, or that's, so what we want to do is subtract 2 from it, because now we're looking 2 ahead instead of 1 ahead like we were here. All right, and so sometimes I think a problem is easier to break into little pieces. So I'm going to say that chunk is equal to, and it's going to be S, and then I colon, and I plus 3. I'll walk through. So this is going to be each 3-letter chunk. So let's think. When I is 0, because this is going to go from 0 to here. When I is 0, then this will be 3. And so 0 colon 3 will get us characters 0, 1, and 2, because remember it's up to but not including that last value. When I is 1, it's going to be 1, right? When I is 0, it's 0 colon 3. When I is 1, it'll be 1 colon 4, but it's up to but not including, so we'll get characters 1, 2, and 3. Right? When I is 2, and we have 5, then we'll get characters, let's see, 2, 3, and 4. And so we're grabbing 3-character chunks every time through. And then I can do a test, and I'll say if chunk is equal to ABC, count plus equals 1, and then even with the for loop, return the count. Start with double equals. Okay, and again, this variable right here, call it what you want. Chunk seemed like a good descriptive word for what it was today, and there are 3 ABCs, there are 2 ABCs, and there is only 1 ABC in this string here. So that worked. Last one. All right, return a new string, which is a copy of S, except for all letters preceded by an X have been removed. So this is building a string. So we'll start with an empty string. I'll go ahead and turn it, and then I'll just work in between. I need to look, I need to loop through every character in S, but I need to look before it each time. So I am looking at 2 characters at once. So I'm going to do for I in range len str. And we don't want to go out of bounds. Or actually, it's len str. That's good. And so let's see. All characters preceded by an S have been removed. So I is going to go from 0 to the length of the string, which means the character before would be if S I minus 1 is equal to an X, or I'll say actually if it's not equal to an X, then we'll take the result and we'll add string character at I. Right, so we're going to loop through the string, and here is the character we're thinking about adding to the result, and this is the character before it. And every time it's not, the character before is not an X, we will append it to the result. And this is going to seem like it works, but we're going to have to look closely at something. LENS. So this one, let's see. This A should have been removed because it's preceded by an X. That looked like it worked. And this E is preceded by an X, and it's gone. So that worked. Here, right, we should have that A gets removed. So it starts out with XB. That C gets removed. We get an XD. That's good. Let's see. This X should get removed, and this E should get removed. And we end with the X and the F, so that's good. And here, here's the weird one. The b got removed, and the b is not preceded by an x. But something interesting happened here, and that is, right, this is the character at position 0 when I is 0. And so 0 minus 1 is -1. And remember that Python allows you to use negative numbers as list indices, and it pulls from the back of the list. So when I was 0, this looked at character -1, which was right here, which made it seem like this b was preceded by an x, but in fact it was not. And so I'm trying to think of how to solve this, and my idea is we'll do two things. Right, the first character can never be preceded by an x, so I'm just going to say we'll start out the result at s0, and when I do my range, since that character has already been looked at, we're going to make our loop go from 1 to the last character in the string rather than starting with 0. And that way, right, we'll look here and we'll see the x, but we won't look here and see this x. And let's run it, and everything looks good now. So sorry that video got a little bit long, but these problems were just a little bit trickier. There are a couple problems here for you to try at the end. What I've done for you is put the expected output in a comment here. So after you complete the function, and you run it, make sure that you see the output, the expected output show up. And I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.